Doctors believe that brain injuries were pretty much irreversible. Well, in tonight's second chapter of our special series, The Brain That Heals Itself, we have living proof that the old thinking about the brain is not the last word, not by a long shot. David Mattingly has our story tonight.
When a stroke paralyzed his left side, Michael Bernstein was told he would never walk, work, or drive his favorite sports car again. But look at him now.
How fast are we going right now?
Bernstein is one of reportedly thousands of seemingly hopeless cases in the U.S. and Europe proving traditional medicine wrong by following a pretty radical idea.
They mold their own brains.
Behavioral neuroscientist Edward Taub is on the leading edge of research into brain plasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, regrow, and relearn after injury. So if there's a disconnect in my brain that results in, say, some sort of paralysis,
Right.
I can now find a way to reconnect in another part of my brain and regain that movement.
Usually, yes.
And in some patients, it happens surprisingly fast. Willie Leftwich, a retired lawyer, had a stroke almost 2 years ago that rendered his right hand almost useless. But in just a few hours at Taub's clinic at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, he's picking up a coffee mug. So what's happening with his brain? Is it learning that quickly?
For him, it is.
Taub's therapy involves hours of intense repetition where the patient attempts ordinary movements with the impaired limb. The good limb is confined to a soft mitt and is not used. According to a 2007 study, MRIs showed that the therapy stimulates the injured brain to grow new gray matter and rewire to accommodate this activity. How well these patients do depend a lot on the individual, and no one walks out of here with a complete recovery. But Dr. Taub is reporting results that sound remarkable. He says almost everyone, 97%, sees substantial improvement. But Taub's therapy is not widely used. Insurance doesn't pay for it. Most of his patients arrive after other doctors and therapists have said they weren't going to get better. And putting this therapy to work almost didn't happen at all. In the 1980s, Taub was prosecuted in a high-profile case over alleged mistreatment of his lab monkeys. You lost your funding.
Yes.
You lost your lab.
Yes.
You lost your monkeys.
Yes.
The conviction was overturned on appeal, and he had to work to clear his name. If he hadn't, you wouldn't be seeing this. After therapy at Taub's clinic, Michael Bernstein's left hand worked so well, he decided to take piano lessons, something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. He wowed everyone at his 60th birthday party with a concert. Bernstein's recovery stands out among Taub's patients, but could be an indication of what kind of potential lies inside our plastic brains. David Mattingly, CNN, Birmingham.
Not only can this research help stroke patients, but when we come back, find out how you can rewire your brain, overcoming learning disabilities, even aging.
They can actually turn back the memory clock so that a person who's 80 can function the way they did when they were 70 or 60 or even younger. In some cases, people have been able to turn back the memory clock almost 25 years so that they really are not just maintaining their brains, but they're going back to an earlier, better level of functioning by tuning them up.
You want that? Innovation. This is now.
Precious.
Wire, regrow, and relearn after injury. So if there's a disconnect in my brain that results in, say, some sort of paralysis,
Right.
I can now find a way to reconnect in another part of my brain and regain that movement.
Usually, yes.
And in some patients, it happens surprisingly fast. Willie Leftwich, a retired lawyer, had a stroke almost 2 years ago that rendered his right hand almost useless. But in just a few hours at Taub's clinic at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, he's picking up a coffee mug. So what's happening with his brain? Is it learning that quickly?
For him, it is. We've got a lot of questions about these astonishing developments. As we did last night, we want to bring in right now Dr. Norman Deutsch, who is the author of The Brain That Changes Itself. That is an amazing story of recovery that we just saw. And for most people, it would seem that that would be a permanent sentence. I guess, is it really as simple as it seems, the therapy?
Well, it took years to figure out how to do it. You know, what happened for many, many years is when a person had a stroke, because we believed that you couldn't grow new connections in the brain, we'd give them about 6 weeks of rehabilitation. At the end of that, we'd say, look, this is as good as it's going to get. What Dr. Tao figured out ingeniously working with monkeys was that if the brain is plastic, what you should be doing is the exact opposite. So you take this good arm, you put it in a sling, and then you incrementally train the weak arm. And he was able to get people who were completely dependent, independent, so that they now have 2 arms. So this is a great example of a treatment that works not only for stroke, but anyone who's got certain kinds of diffuse brain damage where there's some healthy tissue left that can be recruited.
As we get older, the brain degenerates. We all know that. And you're basically arguing, I guess there's nothing to argue here, we know now that we can sort of stave off, I guess, the effects of aging, too, using some of these same theories.
In many cases. Most of us in this culture get something called age-related cognitive decline. Children see and hear and they record what they see and hear almost perfectly. But as we get older, our brains get very noisy. But that is all basically reversible in age-related cognitive decline. The reason we get it is it's a use it or lose it brain, and we haven't been exercising our brains enough by the time we hit middle age. We're usually replaying mastered skills and doing the same thing over and over.
You're talking in part about doing crossword puzzles and learning new languages and keeping your brain active and engaged.
There's 2 levels at which the exercises occur. There's something like learning a new language. It is a great challenge on the brain, and that's a fantastic thing to do. Or if you're going to dance, don't dance the old dances. You want to be doing new dances.
Now, one of the most exciting areas you say is the potential that this breakthrough has for treating children with learning disabilities.
Yeah. In some ways, this is how I got into it. Again, kids with learning disabilities were thought to have their problems for life. They're called disabilities because they stay with you forever. But I've got several chapters in the book that describe these new treatments, which basically do a brain-based analysis of what exactly is causing the person to have difficulty. And usually what's happening is they have one area in the brain that's weak that just needs attention. So let's take something like reading. There are many parts of the brain are required for reading. You know, there's a part that moves your eyes across the page. There's a part that recognizes symbols, a part that attaches meaning to words. If just one of those areas is weak, in other words, the processors are not fast enough, then the whole activity of reading is compromised. You've got a traffic jam in your brain. So with the brain-based assessment, we basically find what that weak area is, develop exercises specifically for it.
Targeting that area.
Raising it incrementally. And by the end of those exercises, which by the way may look nothing at all like reading itself, that's what's so new here. But by the end of that, they can spontaneously read. So I think this is really going to revolutionize education. And I would love to see every kid who comes into school getting one of these assessments so that they don't fail and wire into their brains they're stupid just because a small part of the brain is weak or compromised.
And to watch our entire series, The Brain That Heals Itself, log on to cnn.com/Campbell. Coming up.